the beginning of a series of what would be around 8 bi-monthly sessions where we plan to bring in sector and industry experts who will be sharing practical insights, guidance, and providing mentorship around restoration value chains. So these sessions have also been designed based on the key gaps and key areas that were identified through the needs assessment and the baseline questionnaires that both the WRI and Wilgrow teams have been working on with the cohort. So before we dive into the session, I'd just like to hand it over to the WRI team and maybe Divya, Prajita, to come in and share a little bit context on core capacity building within, how it's fit into the Land Accelerator journey and any kinds of learnings or insights on this phase from previous cohorts. So yeah, over to Divya.
Thank you. And once again, welcome everyone. We are very excited on this, starting this particular run of the program, and especially this phase. I think this, as we see it, is probably one of the, most valuable phases where at least we believe, we are building value and sort of, co-creating this with you all, and it's an ongoing journey. Like Ananya said, we've been talking to a lot of you for, the last so many months and trying to understand as much as we can about what your business needs are, what your expectations are from this program. And I hope what we've been able to understand and put down together, right, to be able to design this and bring to you today and in the coming weeks. And this phase is, supposed to last at least next 3 to 4 months. We really hope we are able to build value, bring value for you, and meet the needs that you have. And we will also continue to do this, gather inputs from you and understand your feedback and do this dynamically over the next 3 to 4 months. So thank you so much for joining today. And like Ananya said, this phase has been with inputs, throughout different engagements, right? We've met you in person, we have spoken to you on calls, we've done interviews, different members of the team, the partner, WRI India, Wilgrow. We've, done several engagements, and this is all sort of coming together from what we have found. Right. This is also, I would like to add here that this is also aligned with the standard Land Accelerator curriculum and further shaped, of course, with inputs by the Wilgrow team. The standard LA curriculum that I speak about, I think we've already also spoken to you in detail during the onboarding workshop. We focus on areas such as, this is specifically, it's a program which is unique in nature because it focuses on land restoration businesses. So, how do we improve the business models? How do we fill in some of the gaps that the business strategies have? How do we improve the financial readiness of some of the models? How do we introduce impact measurement and reporting, right? So to be able to sort of make systems more robust so that the organization, the enterprise is ready for more funding as well, right? And is able to balance profits with impact, something along the lines of what was discussed during the panel discussion at the onboarding workshop, right? That need to align profits as well as impact. And of course, also, how do you tell your story, in different, sort of context to different storytellers and different platforms, because that is very, very important for any business, especially businesses that are, closer to the early traction stage than they are to maturity and further growth. Right? What you can expect here is a mix of expert-led sessions, practical tools, opportunities for peer learning, and a lot of these sessions will be accompanied by take-home assignments, right? So, in a sense that one is also where, some sessions you will work with us. We will provide some worksheets where you can, like this session that might also come in, you can work with us. There'll be some cases where there'll be take-home assignments. And what we would request and expect is that you do these diligently and then share with us for review and feedback. And we will do our best to sort of get back to you with as tailored a feedback as, valuable feedback that we can, put together after consulting with all the experts. And we will also share additional tools and resources with the sessions, as they are relevant. What we have seen is, I think such sessions, they are most relevant when people actively participate. They ask questions, of course, that depends on the facilitator when those questions can come in. Also share your experiences and make the most of this learning journey, right? So do not think that, okay, this doesn't apply to me. Why do I need to come in? And ask questions that may not make sense to you today, but it might be relevant in your journey going forward sometime in the near future. So think of it like that. And yeah, all the best for this. Any questions or any thoughts before we move forward? Happy to take them right now. No? Okay, so then back to you, Ananya.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Divya. So it's now my pleasure to introduce our expert for today's session. We're very delighted to have Dr. Amrita Neelkanthan with us, who will be leading a two-part session on identifying opportunities in the restoration value chain. Amrita is a conservation scientist and practitioner with over 2 decades of experience at the intersection of restoration, biodiversity, and livelihoods. She's the executive director for the Network for Conserving Central India and is also a founding member and key participant in many conservation coalitions. She holds a doctorate from Columbia University. So her work began in Central India in 2013, and she's also previously worked across some of the key biodiversity hotspots in the world. She's led multicultural initiatives focused on balancing development and conservation, and her work focuses on landscape level approaches that integrate ecological outcomes with viable economic models, and that helps enterprises navigate and position themselves within complex restoration value chains. So with her strong systems perspective and cross geography experience, Amrita brings very practical insights on how startups can build scalable impact driven solutions while meaningfully embedding themselves in restoration value chains. And her sessions will be a key anchor as we begin this phase of the Land Accelerator journey. And they're intended to help you start thinking about how you can position yourselves within, restoration value chains in a more comprehensive manner instead of working in isolation. So this will be, as Divya also mentioned previously, this is critical as you eventually work on strengthening scalability, market relevance, and overall investor readiness. So with that, I'll hand it over to Amrita.
Thanks, Ananya. Thanks, Divya. What a wonderful thing to have joined. Honestly, we've been talking about how different silos operate without speaking to each other for so long that it's really nice to be in a room where those silos are completely diminished, right? But there's a bunch of us who've done research, there's a bunch of you who are grappling with the realities of what that research could or could not do. And you are sort of in the space where a lot of you are already embedded in the NGO systems, sort of like the CSO systems, and you're trying to bring sort of business to it, which is great. And it's really important, like everyone's already said, to be embedded in across these systems to really get a hold of what's going on. And that's what we hope to do a little bit of today. There is a worksheet, and we'll go through the worksheet piece by piece together. So please don't worry about it right now, but do have it handy. The idea is that you will all sort of fill this in as we go along individually. So everyone should have their own worksheet at this point. I'm going to try Teams and I don't great with share. So I'm going to try and share my presentation and let me know if you're hearing me okay. And then we jump right into it. But just before we go, I'm so glad you're all here. And I'm so glad to be able to do this with you. Let's see if this works out. Right. And if I do presenter view on here, let me know if you're seeing presenter view or the presentation, or are you seeing presenter view?
No, we are not, Dr. Amrita.
Okay. So someone help me out here. Do me a quick walkthrough on Teams on how we're doing this. I should stop sharing and maybe I'll just share the whole thing and see what happens. Share the whole window, and then if we do present here, it should work. Give me a second. Sorry about this. Share, and I should start the presentation. And interesting. Share entire screen. Now we're seeing ourselves. Is that what's happening? Okay, great. So
Yes.
now if we do this, we should all be able to see the screen that's showing the presentation. Is that working?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, So here we're going to go into this. The first session is largely going to be about positioning. How do we find our place in the larger restoration realm? Okay, that's the crux of it. And as you can see, this is from my PhD times where people were collecting tendu and I was roaming around corridors around Kanha. So that's where this is from. So the objectives of this session, we want to understand how restoration is as a system. It's not a linear chain. We want to map your enterprise's position within these value chains and the larger system. We want to sort of identify gaps in positioning, perhaps think about whether we're replaceable, what our dependencies are, and how that shapes how we do business in this setup. And also, we're going to connect your business model to concrete restoration outcomes. Now, don't worry if this is not a direct line already. That's the whole point. The point is to think about how this is going to work out and where your place is in the system where value is being added. As we go along, I want this to be largely interactive. So if I say something that is not what you do, it's largely going to be something that I've gleaned quickly off the docket of this cohort. So if something is wrong, you should flag it. You should say, hey, that's not what we do. This is what we do. And if you don't agree with something that's been written on one of the slides, we should just discuss it. It's meant to be interactive. And I will bring my experience. And part of that experience has been very researchy and very in the NGO CSO world. So terms are going to mean different things. When I say ecosystem, my brain's thinking largely of the places I've been. So tropical jungles, lots of diversity, lots of species. Perhaps when you think of ecosystem, you're thinking of a much more landscape-based setup. Farmers, how they interact with markets, how business is currently playing a role, and how maybe that should change. So if the words are tripping you up, that's just semantics and jargon between our worlds. And we should flag it and we should get to the bottom of what those mean. With that, let's go through a quick worksheet walkthrough. Do you all have your worksheets? Just someone say yes if you have access to them.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And so the point is not for you to start filling it in immediately. I'll walk through and say now, if you can respond to it on your worksheet, that would be great. And if you have additional thoughts, and I am moving on to the next part of this session, in the interest of time, I'd love for you to jot down quick notes on your worksheet or, take a picture of a slide or a screen grab and just keep it with you as a pointer to put it into your worksheet later on as we move through the session. In the worksheet as well, if something is unclear, please do ask, because if it's unclear in the worksheet and you're responding to it, it won't make sense as an exercise for all of us. And so here's the first bit, right? So what is a value chain? We're going to get started very hands-on, and then we'll get into some of the science or how I view things and how you might view things as we go along. So the first thing is, now that you all have your worksheets, just off the top of your head, don't think about it too hard. What do you think a value chain is? Just write it down quickly. And then there's another section on this worksheet that talks about your own value chain. So we can spend some time on that, or you can jot down just a few words there as it applies to you and think about where you are in that value chain. This is the bit that we're going to be here. I can pause if someone wants to share immediate thoughts. If someone has a word they want to put in the chat, I'd love it if someone from the Will Grow or WRI team would say if there's stuff coming up on chat. And we can go through it. I can talk a little bit about someone who wants to volunteer their first two sentences or a sentence of what is a value chain. Jump in here. This is where it starts getting interactive right off the bat. I can't actually see you also. If someone's got their hand raised, someone's going to have to work through that with me.
No one has their hand raised as of now, but Rini, were you coming in? Okay, Dr. Amrita, do you want to go first?
Sure. A value chain for me is sort of
No,
how...
sorry. We have
sorry,
two
Dr.
Dr.
Amrita Mukherjee.
Amritas.
Yes. Okay, we're going to do
I'll
Dr.
say
Amrita
Dr. Mukherjee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this confusion. Hi.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good
I'm Dr.
afternoon.
Amrita Mukherjee from Arogyam Medisoft. Yeah, so for me, the value chain means it's a full range of activities that we're doing involved in creating a product or service from the initial idea raw material all the way to the final delivery to the customer and even
Yes,
post sale support probably.
right. And so that's an excellent answer, right? That is what a value chain is. For me, what that signals is that you are part of the system. But for your perspective, it is the system you're working in. So in this session, what we're going to do a little bit is jog between both those frames. I'm going to try and push you all to think of the larger systems you're part of while giving due respect and the diligence it will take to build your value chain. So that's an excellent starting point of the kind of session this is going to be. So for, let's say, one of the value chains I'm really familiar with because of the work I've done, a value chain of, let's say, good timber, right? So by that we mean someone gets paid fair dues. The timber is grown specifically for that. It's not illegally felled. And there's a certification set up for it. So right from the point of logging all the way to what that timber is sold as timber is a value chain for me. And that, of course, can be global, can be local. But that's exactly what you said as well. From the inception of why this is grown for this express purpose, ideating a product, and all the way down to getting that product to sale and perhaps post sale as well. What happens to that timber afterwards, right? So that's exactly it. So in that value chain, is there anyone upstream of you? So let's say your idea started with one of you is working on millets, right? So when you're procuring millets, is there anything upstream of that? Is it the farmer who may or may not be only growing millets, maybe growing a bunch of other things with millets? Who's downstream? Is it the buyer? And is the buyer a B2B setup or is the buyer a B2C setup? What does that mean? And who sort of shapes your operations? Is it policies? Is it gram panchayats? Is it forest policies or revenue policies or agricultural policies? Is it district policies, state policies, national policies? So there's a whole bunch of things that can shape how you do what you want to do and how well you can do what you want to do. Now, given that sort of setup, you've sort of put down your value chain. You sort of thought about who's upstream, downstream. And if you're going to take a little, tell me if you need a little bit more time with this. It's section 1 and 2. If people are jotting down, or if you're having to pay attention to me, I can keep quiet for 3 minutes while people jot down stuff. So someone give me a quick, are we good on this 1 and 2? And then where do you sit on this chain, or should we stay here a while?
So I'm just going to quickly come in because I know that Dr. Amrita Neelkantan cannot see her screen.
Yes.
Rini wants to go, and after that, we'll hand over the mic to Hitesh, who
Okay.
wants to say. And meanwhile, everyone, please keep on jotting down your thoughts and sharing them on the chat box. I'm monitoring it along with Ananya as well. So we'll voice out whatever needs to be done. Dr. Amrita, every 10 minutes, whenever you're comfortable, just check in with us and
Yes.
we'll let you know whatever's there on the chat
Awesome.
box. Yeah.
I've got a stopwatch going as well, so I'll try and keep us on time as we go through this. Over to Rini.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something is that when you are a startup, when you're looking at a value chain, it's always helpful to see how are you disrupting that value chain. So when you're writing it from a startup perspective, you are providing something which is going to disrupt that value chain and add exponential value. And that's the lens which I'd like you all to look at when you're writing it from a startup which is on the cusp of growth. So whatever Amrita has written is a beautiful context. So if you're going to personalize it, it always helps to see what is the delta that your innovation, whether it's in thought, process, or action, is bringing, and which is going to add value to that value chain. And that's really why we have so many really cool startups with us. That's it. That's
Yes.
all I wanted to say.
Over to you, Hitesh. I think you had something to add on to the question that initially Dr. Amrita had.
Yeah. Hi. It is this side from Graphia Ventures. So yeah, I can narrow down the value chain and like what are there the upstream, main, like midstream and downstream of it. So yeah, that part I can cover for our starter. If you want, I can go ahead with that.
Yeah, we can do that as an exercise towards the end. Right now, if you've got
Yeah.
it down on your worksheet, that's excellent.
Yeah.
I see we're closing in on 20 minutes, so I'm going to sort of move us on from here. But yeah, thank you for volunteering that. There will be space to get back into it as we go through the session.
For sure.
Are we good to go forward?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so here's a bit that I want us to remember how I said we're going to jog back and forth between two frames. So this is the frame. Restoration is becoming enterprise-led. What do I mean by that? Small parcels of land are being restored by independent people, whether it's forest restoration, whether it's farms. This is already happening. And they are very micro enterprises. And so your introduction into the system means that the public systems are already there. There's a lot of government restoration that takes place across farm and farm field and forest frontiers. There's a whole bunch of NGOs that are not really well connected, but are talking to each other in some manner, trying to get restoration happening, whether it's watersheds, whether it's lakes, whether it's forests, whether it's for wildlife, whether it's for profitable, sustainable use. That's already happening. But enterprises are a specific thing that's exciting in this space. They can get some amount of speed because they're not locked into the rigidity and the bureaucracy that governments typically work with. They also have a speed that's unhindered with the NGO trappings of being really small teams working in resource poor environments. The incentive is kind of different. The motivation is different from an enterprise point of view to get this right, to get it to scale, to make it useful without and self-sufficient. And distribution wise, enterprises have a leg up as well. Public systems are also hugely distributed, but in a very different manner. So it's the how that differentiates it. And so that really makes me think about how enterprises, whether it's tourism ones, whether it's production ones, whether it's awareness ones, or whether it's even like tech, there's a lot of tech that's happening in restoration systems, and they're becoming central actors. And as a cohort, what's really exciting is you kind of span all three columns in terms of how you are engaging with the system. Perhaps it's not explicit, but it's inbuilt into what you do. And so that's really what this slide is saying. And the reality of restoration is that your existing systems, there are community systems, there are institutional systems, there are obviously underswell, ground, foundational ecological systems, and there are value chains. And to what Rini said, you're going to try and, disrupt some of those value chains or get the delta that really makes them much more possible to scale. Um, and because restoration is not starting from zero, I kind of want to take a minute to just, flag a note from learning from nature. And this is going to be kind of a provocation, right? So here's the note. The note is ecological systems and natural systems have limits to scale. And that's something I kind of want you to really deeply think about. What does this mean? This doesn't mean that it's a anti-scale note. It just means an appropriate scale note. At what scale will you be most effective? At what scale are you going to remain flexible enough to change when things change? And at what scale are you going to really work through the problem and actually find the solution to what you're already doing? I'll give you a real world example. One such effort that started and continues to crop up every so now and then is the lantana furniture one. Now, lantana is an invasive weed. It's taken over a large proportion. Almost all forests in India have lantana in them. Agricultural fields have lantana in them. It's a escaped British hedge that has taken over much of the world, certainly much of India. So a lot of people want to get rid of it. So what do? You pull out the lantana, but now what do you do with it? Do you use it as firewood? It's not very great as firewood. So people started trying to treat it like cane and make furniture from it. So far, so good. We can make a viable product out of something that needs to be pulled out for restoration. Excellent. But what I mean about scale is, what do you do when the lantana at your field site has been removed and made into furniture and sold? Do you sunset your startup that did a great job? Do you move to a new geography? Do you take your learnings and say, what in this place now needs the same model? And does my startup now do a different function? Because we're tied to this place. So you have choices, but there is an inherent scaling limit And that's something I want you to really think about as we go through this. Not in a detrimental way, but in a building flexibility and adaptability way. It's sort of like saying, do as nature does. Um, and that's one thing I want you to keep core to it. Moving on, the reality of restoration is also it looks different from different perspectives. So, to someone who's trying to bring back millet farming, it might look like this beautiful field that is grown with millets as it was always. Um, the tradition lives on, the gains in nutrition are the same. The harvesting is just as difficult, but perhaps that's where tech can help. It retains, like this field is also an example of lantana maintenance, right? So you're ensuring you're using this field so it doesn't get covered by lantana. So it's a crude restoration gain. It can look like sustainable use, that first picture that I used about tendu. When is it allowed? Who allows who? How much tendu? There are systems for this. But restoration might look different for different people, is the point I'm trying to make. It might look very different for a researcher like me. I might have a completely different goal, that tigers should be able to move from one national park to the other across central India. How do we make that possible without too much damage to people's lives? How do we ensure that this is the state of play for wild populations in central India while continuing to develop people's lives and livelihoods? So that's a completely different restoration question and has a whole bunch of different restoration answers to it. It could look like this. It could look like a restoration atlas. A lot of our research looks at maps. Where can it happen? How can it happen? What kind of restoration is appropriate for that setup? And there are atlases and there are networks for you to plug into. One of the points of showing you that there are different kinds of lenses to restoration is that there's a whole world out there for you to also be a part of. And the reason to be a part of it is to recognize that all of that will sort of work together at the end of the day. Tomorrow, if there's a great scheme that incentivizes other crops that use the same land that millets does, it's going to impact you. That's an example. Or if you have soil as one of the things that you want to really work on, and there are completely different perverse incentives to continue to misuse soil, then you're going to be in a disadvantage and you're not going to hear about it till much later, till it's already happening on the farms that you're planning to work on. So to be in part of the different restoration networks is a key thing to consider. How much time you devote to it is a completely different matter. But to know that this exists is important. And I kind of want to talk about that a little bit. These systems are in layers, right? There's the landscape ecology, how water runs through the landscape, how forests will continue to expand or shrink, how farmers will get or not get monsoon on time, how communities and their livelihoods will be impacted, how FPOs, governments, and the use of commons may see a resurgence or a dampening. And if any of this sounds completely out of the wheelhouse, stop me and tell me that, oh, this is getting a little bit different from where we're at. But that's kind of the point. Um, and are your value chains dependent on one of these layers that are larger than you, that you inhabit, is one thing to think about. And so in that, we're going to sort of look at section 2 of your worksheets. And we're going to go through that together. And here, I just want to flag that this is a picture of mycorrhizal fungi, which is sort of like the communications network of forests in many places, including trees telling other trees, like if you need sugar, I can pass it through this network. And so I think these system layers also function like that. A lot of community or institutions work happens hidden. And so you want to be at least knowledgeable that that's how the communication of your work is being spread out. Okay, so this part is where do enterprises sit, right? And I kind of want you to think about this for your own work, for your own startup. Where all do you have operations in your value chain, or in the larger value chain, where are your operations across this? I'm going to throw up some examples, but you can sort of, these are examples, they may not be accurate, but just think about what that kind of shape is for you. So let's just use the open field one. The tribal women are collectors, so they are level 1, right? They're sort of collecting the produce. This is production. There's a processing hub that's potentially like an aggregator. There's a level 4 market setup, and there's a OS system still in beta, right? So there's an institution setup that needs to come up. And maybe this aggregator processes are sort of collapsed right now over here. So that's one way to do it. Think about how yours, individual ones, are positioned here. We're going to take a little bit of time here. Think about it and tell me where you're at in the worksheet and if I've skipped past something.
Quickly coming in, Dr. Amrita, I think we have two hands that are raised. Mr. Jayant, followed by Mr. Nagasai.
Let's just get into those two and then we'll go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Amrita. I think this is very interesting. And I think what we are doing at Nature Connect is our enterprise is spread across all the sections of that. So it starts in the forest and ends in some market in the Europe or in the US. So we have to deal with a lot of. So I'm going to mention that is the only point that I will be having a very elaborate answer into the worksheet.
No, that's totally fine. And that's part of it, right? Like if it's really elaborate, then which is the section that needs strengthening or which is like the weakest link? And we might get into positioning largely in this particular session, but we'll get into strengthening in the next session.
Yeah, okay.
If something feels, this is the other thing, all of you are likely to be at different operating levels. And that's just part of how any cohort really functions. So if something is done and dusted for you, please bear in mind there might be someone else who's just working through it. And if it's done and dusted for a lot of you and a lot of hands go up saying we already know this, we can skip past it as a group together. But thank you. I will look forward to seeing the complexity of your value chain.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Amrita. I think in the earlier slide that you were showing, right? I think there are like 4 lenses of how do you look into restoration, right? But as a company, we might not, I think when a company, because we will try to generally narrow down into as a startup,
right?
Because it will not start with a holistic perspective, right? It will start with how do I narrow down into the most MVP, as in what is that minimum thing that
how am I going to be most efficient and effective?
Which also
right?
means then business sense, which means we'll pick up something where there's a lot of value in terms of lucrative value, but it might not be the thing that ideally should be from ecology or nature point of view, right?
Right.
So I don't know, how do we look into those? Because some of them we generally might not even be part of it, right?
Give me a gnarly example. Give me an example of something like that.
Like example, soil, right? Like I think for me as a company, I am going to grow like millet maximized as in any crop that I do. If I'm doing
right.
For me, it was more on how do I example chili value chain. I think which is not a part of this cohort, but generally where for me I have to maximize it, which means I'm disbalancing the soil ecosystem, all of that, as in which is natural part of it, and I'm not growing anything apart from that, right? Which means I'm polluting. So my larger thing is more on as a startup, we only will focus on one thing.
I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's put it this way. You don't need to be engaged with your operations across all the levels, but you kind of need to know that they exist, right? So let's say you're being really efficient and you're being really effective in one direction. You have to recognize that there will be a collective around you that will say, hey, this is hampering this, or hey, that is hampering this. Now, that can be bad reviews from vendors or final sale points, or that can be initial farmers flagging that this is not working for us. Or if everyone is accruing money, perhaps a systems worker like me might come in and be like, you have a runway to make this money for 10 years, but after 10 years, the system is going to be at the verge of collapse. So what's your plan then, right? And there are temporal differences here. I think it's a very important point that you brought up, that business is led to be really good at one thing and maximize. I want you to sit with the idea of maximize for how long and maximize to what end. I hope that helps. It's a little abstract, but we can get into it a bit more as we go through. Does that help in any way?
Yeah. I think for other thing which is leading to it only more on thought process is more like then it's kind of bigger cursor on macro view of how overall ecosystem is. Because in my case, I think I can a little bit, I think at least detail out and talk it about. We are talking about biochar, like particular use case of biomass to biochar. Then as a business, we only talk about the steps of, okay, what is that exact biochar process looks like the same level, farmer, aggregator, there is a buyer, all of those, carbon buyer, all of them, right? Which means we might be really good in what we are doing right now. But if I step back and think of how is it impacting ecosystem, how is it impacting livelihoods, how is it impacting climate, all of those, then maybe this might have a runway of 5 years, 10 years, depending upon policy might change all of those. So there's a kind of bigger cursor. At least you should know as a business is what I'm thinking. But what we do in the exact value chain is where I think we should have more details of. But macro picture at least should be clear. That's what my understanding has been.
Absolutely. And you've hit the nail on the head, right? So the idea for you would be to do biochar with the add-ons, and all of what you just said is excellent storytelling. It's like we are doing this, but it's linked to all of these other parts, right? This is the larger story we're trying to tell. This is the restoration story that we are part of in this way. That's one piece. The other piece is to really consider, we'll get into it in a bit. So I'm going to ask you to hold your horses on that, because there is a very key question that you've hit on, which I'll come back to you. Just checking in with everyone else. Anything in the chat that we should quickly check on?
We're good. I'll just request everyone that before you start speaking, if you could mention your name as well as your organization's name, because Dr. Amrita can't see all of your suffixes that are there next to your team's chats. So yeah, nothing on the chat box. We're going good.
Okay, great. We're going to move along a little bit here. And so here's who's in the room. We've already sort of done a little bit of this. And we're going to sort of look at what you did with that upstream, downstream, midstream, that whole setup a little bit, but also recognize that not everyone has to do everything. This is exactly the point that we were just chatting about. Do what you're going to do really well. Find that delta, but be acknowledgement of where you are sited in the larger system. Because what that does is it allows you to forecast. It allows you to see your place in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. It allows you to look at the different pieces of your upstream, midstream, downstream, and say, where is this weak? At what point will one of these people we work with or we depend on shift? And that's kind of the point I was making with the previous section. This one is more about you don't have to do everything, but you kind of have to know what all can be part of this system in an enterprise manner. Okay, so now that we've done that, if you look at your section 2, is there anything you would revise about where you sit, about where someone upstream is actually upstream or in the midstream? Think about that for a bit, but we're not going to spend much time here. But think about it really, because we spent some time putting these pieces together. Is there anything to revise in that section 2? I'm going to let everyone take a minute to look at their worksheets, and then we will move on. And just to ask in the room, how many people feel like they're enablers? If you do a show of hands and someone says these many people are enablers.
I see 3 enablers as of now. If you have doubts regarding what a particular terminology for, I see 4 enablers. If you have any doubts regarding what a term means, if you want to clarify, please feel free to put it in chat. I'll read that out. I see 4 enablers, closing it on 4.
Great. And how many, if we lower those hands, and if we say how many are market facing, like straight up, you move products to customers and connect buyers, or you're building the markets themselves? Show of hands.
I see 3, 4,
Great.
5.
Yeah. And how
5.
many do we have that are direct restoration actors? Don't think you've got to put plants into the ground for this, but think about it. Are you restoring soil? Are you restoring watersheds? Are you restoring any resource or any system? Are you a direct restoration actor? Show of hands.
I see 4.
Ah, good. I think that's a great set, because not everyone, you'll see in your spaces when you are inhabiting with other startup spaces, very, very few people are direct restoration actors. You know them, you're friends with them, you've met them. But this cohort, having 4 people who just off the top of the head are like, we are a direct restoration actor, that's really good. That's a really good cohort to put together. And as you can tell, we have people across all 3 pillars. I'm going to move on from here as long as people are good too. Yes? Okay. So now there's the section, which is where are you positioned, right? So where are you in the system? Are you replaceable? What's the value you bring? And what sort of dependencies do you have? And we don't have to answer this right now, but we'll take some time to do this. And how does this link to restoration outcomes? That's really important. So on your worksheets, you should see some sections which are talking about these pieces. Where are you in the system? We've sort of spent some time on that. Where are you replaceable? So are there other entities doing what you do? How unique is your offering as a startup? And that's sort of leading to what Rini flagged really way back when we started. How disruptive are you going to be to that value chain? So think about it a little bit. There's no wrong answers here. If you are replaceable, are you in a geography where that replacement is really hard to pull together? And so therefore it's a future forecasting replaceability. Are you a competitor to who would replace you, and do you have an edge on them? None of these questions are binaries. None of these make or break your offering. But what each of these does is force clarity. And if you have that clarity, you are going to be better positioned to run that business in the direction you want to. The other really important one that I constantly find NGOs and startups and people planning programs, we all really do this question not the justice it deserves, which is where is your dependency? On what piece does your work rest? Does it rest on the back of steady, sustained production by farmers? Does it rest on a sustainable harvest from forests that is not fluctuating year on year? Where is that dependency that is just completely out of your control? And I feel like if we ask this question more, whether we're planning programs, whether we're building policy, or whether you're trying to build a startup to fit a specific need, it will come as fewer surprises. You'll get into the habit of rolling with the punches as the next surprise comes along, because you have spent time to think about what could be a plan B, how will you deal with this? So I kind of want to stop here for a bit, take your time, and take 4 minutes to answer all the way to section 5 on your worksheets. And if anyone's already gotten there, throw something about dependency into the chat, or replaceability, which feels more personal, like are you replaceable? But it's kind of key to think about. Across the question 2 and 3, if you can have some answers that you want to throw into chat, that would be great. Or if you want to jump in and talk to us, we can do that as well.
Jayant, Namrata, Nagasai, I see your hands are up. Do you want to jump in with respect to the question that Dr. Amrita had?
No, we have to just lower our hands.
You were all the direct restoration actors.
I think I just have, yeah, I think more of clarification only because I was also just reflecting upon because the business we build generally, I think I'm just sharing my experience of it is more on we are very passionate about a problem which only we have only one particular lens of it, right? I would have not even thought of the whole ecosystem while we even thought of it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's all largely dependent on, at least at the initial stage, it's idea largely driven by founder experiences, all of them. So I'm still thinking, where are we in the ecosystem? I think the first question, where are you in the whole system?
I love that you're there. I really love that you're there, because for me, what that signals is you're great at doing business. You have single focus and you're working through it. You are able to be like, oh, but if I think broader, where does that cite me? Tell me a bit about your business. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I think it is the same. For us, it was more on carbon, like laser focused on how do we make this carbon accessible to the farmers and communities, right? So then the easiest way that
So walk me through who's currently buying that carbon or who values that carbon.
where it's largely Western tech companies or oil and gas companies,
Great.
and largely based out of Europe and US. These are the people who generally buys this, and
Right.
it was more on then someone has to generate it. Then
Yeah.
perfectly suited is farmers who is sitting with the soil and biomass. So
Yep.
that's where the overall thing is right now.
And
But in
so
the whole,
in this,
yeah.
and so in this, what's your give? You are the ones who verifies that this is where the carbon will be and this is where it will be sold.
It is end to end in terms of, because for us we have to start with supply, because there is no established as such in terms of market where the supply is already available in terms of biochar or the credits in a defined fashion. So it was more
Yeah.
on very nascent industry right now, right? So you have to work
Yeah.
on end to end of it. Like you work with the producer, get the supply side of things sorted. Then you work
Yeah.
with the auditor to get your credits audited, and you also have to sell it, which means we kind of do end to end. But in some we partner with people, some we do it on our own direct capacity. So where
Yeah.
I understand that where are you replaceable, I think that I am able to answer. But the thing is more on what is even the system I am looking at. Am I looking at a system in terms of the whole just carbon market, or it is a climate, right? Like what is that set that I am looking at? I think
So
that's
the
where I am
carbon market itself is a huge system, right? To sort of
Yeah.
build out of that is to really expand your brain and think how many other systems apply to this, and almost everything does. So
Yeah.
for you in specific, I would say stick to the carbon system. I would say don't try and get out of that. That's a huge space. And in that, really consider how does it link to restoration outcomes. So to be provocative, let's say your farmers are no longer interested in the biochar pipeline. What happens then?
There are no credits, I think.
Yeah. And so now what will you tell those folks? Will you be in a situation to pivot with those farmers to what other ways of carbon they can keep in the ground? Will it be specific paddy plantation that can happen? Or will it be some other version of carbon credits to farmers, which is very lucrative, that this pipeline still exists? So that's kind of where I'm pushing you to think. And I may
But
not have
coming
all the
back to the
answers. I may
previous,
not even have the
yeah.
good example.
Yeah. But coming back to the previous thing, because as a startup, again, you laser focus on one thing. So we would
Yeah.
obviously not know the answers for other set of this one, right? Like say
Yeah,
biochar today.
yeah, yeah.
So
You don't need to have the answers. You just need to have it that if
understand
things
that, yeah.
change, where will I go? That's sort of where I'm going with this. How we strengthen
Perfect, yeah.
your specific value chain, we're going to get into that in the next session. This session is
Yeah.
largely going to try and position you into where you are.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I think we've spent 4 minutes here. So if people have done this, we can just move forward. If there's anything in the chat, or if there are any other hands up, we can jump in there as well.
We're good. Please go on.
Great. So here's a bunch of this has already happened, but let's talk about each of these one by one, right? And here I've picked one of my favorite panels from the Bagchal poster, which is sort of showing the complexity of what we discuss when we're thinking of a simple thing like tiger must get from point A to point B. But we have to consider everything else on that panel before it can do that. So these are the guided provocations I kind of want you to think about. If degradation reduces, does your business still grow? Any immediate reactions to that? We can open up the chat, we can open up, people can unmute and jump in. Let's say you meet your goal of some restoration goal that you had with your startup. If that goal is met, how does your business still grow, or was that the single through line? And now you're going to have to think about what happens to the business. Which is more real for most people in here?
Jayanji, please come in. And I'm going to play teacher here, and I'm going to encourage the other cohort members also to engage. Abhishek, Namrata, Manisha, I see you just because you're Mahesh, Prajwal. Feel free to come in. But yeah, Jayanji, please go ahead.
So I think, so my answer to this is that the business needs to grow because restoration requires investment as it scales. Restoration by nature is it's a activity which gives negative returns in economic terms. So I don't think that reducing degradation is going to stop any business. What I think that you are hinting is that actually the one value chain is lantana. But I don't think for all other value chains where degradation reduces, the business will actually more prosper because your investment in reducing degradation will go down.
Right. And so your gains will increase and so your business will grow.
Absolutely. They will go up. Yeah. And that is how
I really like that framing. Can you give me an example?
So, for example, we are uh, we are investing a lot of money in removing grasses, because grass causes wildfires, and you know that.
Right.
So we are planting some lentil and we are planting some oil seeds, which occupy that space at the speed of grass.
Right. And they outcompete the grass. So you've removed the grass.
So, and then it becomes a positive, I mean, I would say virtuous cycle. I'm not calling that removing grass is a vicious cycle, but economically it is very taxing. So that is how, So that is how, and then you know that what is the scale of that? Yeah, for even threat and opportunity. That you need to probably plant this particular oil seed on maybe 5,000 hectares or whatever. But then it will create that economic incentive to to do this. Otherwise, you can remove grass as much you have the funding for. Afterwards,
and you'll
you
still
don't know
get
what to
it
do.
back. Yeah. Yeah. That's an excellent way to put it. One of the things that you said that absolutely was what I was trying to push people to think about was the scale of the problem that you have taken on to begin with. A lot of times, this question becomes completely moot because if I want to do restoration in central India, let's say my goal is to have thriving corridors that serve people as well as animals, right? The scale of the problem is so immense that there isn't really a reality where there's no degradation across all corridors. This is not how the world will function. So this question becomes less relevant. But it's a provocative question if you've been shooed into one thing and once this happens, then I'll do this. So that's why it's one of the provocative questions on here. But excellent that you sort of found your way into no, but this question has an answer. And this is the answer. I love that.
Thank you.
And that's kind of what I was pointing to. The answer isn't no, we stop. The answer is only no, we stop if the problem itself was a very contained problem, right? And so your market value add was for a specific thing or a specific time. A lot of you will not find yourself there. This is the next question. Who carries the most risk in your model? Any other hands up for the first question, or should we go into this one?
I think we had Benisha come in.
Okay, let's do that. Then we'll go into this one.
Yes. Hi, Amrita.
Hi.
I was just starting by saying sorry about my throat.
No,
Because our
okay.
businesses is built on on degradation, not built on degradation. It's mostly on the strengthening the forest economies. So I think as it happens and more of the communities come forward to capture those values through better processing and data, what we are trying to integrate on ground. And definitely healthier forest can strengthen our businesses by improving quality. That's
right.
there.
And so
That's the only thing.
Yeah, that's additive, right? That's not
Yes.
trying to push through a vacuum. Yeah, but that's a great answer to that question as well. I'll stretch that a little bit and sort of say, let's say the forest economy is fixed. Then what happens?
I mean, even though, if the communities come forward, there'll be better yield stability. I think that is something which is supposed to happen in situations like that. Yeah.
Exactly. And so one of the things to think about is essentially what that first question is trying to do. It's trying to force the limits of what your business can hope for as a goal, right? And so what you want to do is not look at the question as, oh, at what point does my business have to shut down? That's not what it's asking. It's sort of asking you to think about, if this wasn't the case, where is my business actually pushing, right? So a lot of times what you find is, especially in the restoration space, you find we will go restore this patch of land. Okay. And if you have we will go restore this patch of land and it will give us dividends, I want to quietly question how many dividends, for how many people, for how many years. So that's the kind of thinking behind that question. But again, no good answers, no complete absolute answers from me, but very good provocative responses from you. So that's exactly where we wanted to go with this.
Thank you.
Yeah. Over to this one. Who carries the most risk? I mean, there's an example here, but push on it if it's the wrong example.
Yeah,
But
still I feel
yeah,
it's in our case it's farmer only, like because they are
Right.
the one who is producing. So yeah, most of the risk goes to them only.
Yeah. A lot of the risk usually sits at production. That's primarily because when we're even building our programs on the NGO side or on research, we assume the problem has a stable base that we're building off of. A lot of times that's not the case. So this is a question to ask, where is the most risk in your model? Aggregation, functions like aggregation, functions like providing tech could be risky, but typically a lot of the risk sits at production. A lot of the risk sits at sourcing. Anyone else here who wants to talk about the risks in their model?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we
Go
generally
ahead,
put it
Melissa.
at yeah, sorry. I could not see others. So yeah, I think for us generally we naturally build a business where we pass the risk, right? मतलब जहाँ इसको इधर push कर सकता है. If we are somewhere between the value chain,
Yeah,
then downstream, upstream push करके we try to generally reduce. मतलब my thing in terms of our thing is also more on. Then that's how you generally think of scale, ये सब तो ऐसा ही आएगा. Otherwise
sure.
I don't.
Sure, but if you push that risk upstream or downstream, you're essentially just moving it. So in our work, we call it essentially you are relocating risk. You're not diminishing risk in the system that will apply to your value chain.
Because in the real businesses, at least in agriculture, all of this, right? There is an inherent risk in this. Matlab, there are external factors where there is a risk. So owning risk means there is a financial implication to it, right?
And that's fine. And that's fine as long as you are cognizant that the risk has not diminished, it has just been moved. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because as a startup, I think we should at least, matlab, wo to करें. At least in the current businesses that we are in, maybe I think that's what I could think.
Yeah, that's an honest answer. We push risk upstream or downstream. Anyone else?
I think the risk is generally we carry the risk. It is not in our case. We do not let the vulnerable communities. I mean, basically the forest dependent communities. We do not take them the economic burden of our business model. So because that is only the way they will remain committed to, for example, we work on certified value chains. So if you want them to adopt good practices, you cannot be teaching them that we cannot buy the material. See, it is generally the contract for, we sign a contract that if you adopt these practices, then we give you premium and this much minimum volume will be bought by us irrespective whether we have demand in the market or not. So we carry the risk because that risk also has a reward, that is a reputation.
And that has bones of a very socialist social enterprise setup.
Yeah.
It is because in conservation, when you're talking about saving forest, standing forest, then you cannot be telling that, because the next day what will happen if you tell them that, okay, we are not buying, they will just chop the trees. See, they need money, and that is how we need to really understand that what is at stake.
Yeah.
Because businesses always can go down, and they will always.
So how does your model weather that risk?
So it has multiple value chains. It is not dependent on one particular product.
Right.
So we
So
have
if you were only doing mahua, the risk would be immense.
But
if you do mahua, bija, and few other things, then
we have about 7 to 10 different value chains, and we know that which one definitely has a market. And you have to have some backup plans all the time. I'm not trying to say that means that your business will not suffer anything, but you need to have that resilience. If you do not have that, because markets are not fair, whether you want to do some fair practices does not guarantee that you will get access to the market.
forget market. Sometimes the climate is not fair. So what can you do?
Climate,
Right?
climate is it's a no. I think that we cannot blame anything on climate because that's our own doing. That's our contribution to the problem.
Yeah, I completely hear you. And the thing that you said, so here's two answers we got, right? One is we as a business have to be really focused on what we're doing. We have to move risk out of this if we're even going to have a shot at doing what we're doing. Solid answer. This is why this is not a good answer, bad answer situation. This is what works for your business. The other answer is have a diversified set so the risk is mitigated if we hold the risk. Excellent strategy. Both of those are great strategies. I want you to be cognizant of the fact that there is risk and where does it sit. Anyone else who has their hand up and wants to jump in here? Anything in the chat?
Yeah, other thing, this also determines the type of business, right? Like I think in the Jain sir's example, he is holding the risk, which means it's a kind of entity that we are trying to determine, right? And
Right.
I think unfortunately, market determines where you are investable or not based on what you are carrying, right?
Yeah.
So again, smart way of doing it where you don't carry risk and there's a way to scale it, then you are
Yeah.
gently kind of we see investable all of them.
Yep.
But I think it's a two-way approach is what I could think of.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's different models for it. That's exactly right. So let's say in the NTFP world, there is such a widespread need to make the economics of it work better that a distributed risk could work. But let's say you're doing tech for soil, right? Tech for soil management and less impaction. There is only a subset of single point tech that you can work on. It's not a diversified portfolio of multiple tech outputs for farms in this area. So the risk will have to then be moved upstream, downstream, some other stakeholder who can hold it. I'm not saying one is more viable than the other. I'm saying, are you
Yeah.
recognizing where the risk is? Okay. Any other hands up?
Yes, I think as we talk about tech for soil, and I'm really happy to see that apart from Dr. Amrita Mukherjee, Abhishek also wants to speak in. It'd be really nice to hear about a specific value chain, especially from you, Abhishek, since you're working only on mushrooms. So, Dr. Amrita Mukherjee, after that, Abhishek, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
So in Arogya Medisoft, we are working with different analytical solution. That is one of our business pathway. Uh, Making, manufacturing different devices for soil pesticide residue analysis, and it's basically a traceability platform. Now, what we are doing, we are also thinking about another business pathway where we are transitioning, not transitioning, but we are also working as a data company, not only a device company or traceability solution provider. We are
So like a
there as a,
platform,
it's like a platform. Yeah.
right?
So the data is becoming our moat now.
So you're almost having one business pipeline provide the production part for the second.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so that's interesting for me. Anything else? So it's almost like an evolution of a model there, right?
Yeah, you can say.
Yeah.
That we have been working in that area for the last 10 years, but now we are working in the data
Yeah.
business as well.
And I think you've hit another very key point which we're getting into. Some of your points are preceding the slides, which is excellent. Someone
Yeah.
else had their hand up as well, I think.
Abhishek from Navok, over to you.
Okay. Navrok, we've just got the next example for you, but jump in and then we'll go there.
Okay, ma'am, like we work in mushroom space, we give product for like post-harvest value for mushrooms as well as improving the yield. Now, this discussion about like diversifying into other domains so that you reduce that risk, doesn't that lead to decrease in focus? Because like we could have
Yes,
gone
but
to
it
another crop, but we
depends.
chose.
Sure, but I think hang on here. We don't want everyone to diversify. We don't want everyone to try every strategy. We want you to identify the strategy that works for your model, right? So in an NTFP space, the diversification is inherent. Does that help clarify?
Then what is NTFC space? Like,
Sorry, non-timber forest produce. So if you are working with all forest produce, then there is inherent diversity in the system you're trying to fix. right? But if you're trying to do specific product, the diversification strategy will obviously dilute your focus. I completely agree with you. But let's dig a bit deeper. So what would be your way to de-risk, and where is the most risk? Is it farmer adoption, or is it, where is it?
It's the farmer adoption in our eyes.
Right. So if it's farmer adoption, that's again at the level of production, and it signals that if you're a single focus startup, perhaps a lot of your risk will sit at production. So you've got to just acknowledge that that's the risk you're working with. And therefore, you have to have multiple strategies to ensure getting that production. Does that help?
Yeah, just a follow on that. I was just thinking, like, then which means following to that risk also, right? Like, then we also layer or spread the risk across multi steps in the value chain, so that if one collapses, we still have something other thing which is working as a business, right?
Yeah.
So
I feel like a lot of you are pushing towards the strengthening part of your value chains, and that's valuable that it's come up organically. But I think what I want you to currently sit with is just where things are. And I think part of that is because I have found great value to, take walks with a problem, or post dinner think about it for some time. This is that kind of pause. Like, just identify the problem and sit with it for a bit before we go to how will we fix it. There is an inherent assumption here that all of you make repeatedly, and I do not know any startups who wouldn't be a startups if they didn't take that, which is we are capable of finding the way through, which is why startups are very exciting. So while you can brainstorm about where that risk goes, right now let's think about where that risk sits, and we'll come to that in a bit. Okay, the next provocation was, if your impact disappears, does your business still work? What does that mean? Here, I kind of want to make the point of adjacency versus being direct enablers, right? That doesn't make your work less important. It doesn't make your work less true to restoration in any way. What it does is give clarity about where you sit in the system and where that restoration is adjacent to direct involvement. A lot of the work I do is restoration adjacent. Identifying what can be restored doesn't make it restored. Identifying, sometimes the gains are indirect. So let's take the example of standing forest. Standing forest is an extremely difficult proposition to push as restoration because it's so much easier to say restoration is growing forest. But standing forest does what growing forest can never hope to do. So that is, again, like, it's a restoration gain by remaining in status quo, by not doing. So if your impact disappears, does your business still work? This is the next question. Think about it. It's a little abstract. We don't have to have the answers here right now. Any other hands up already?
But it will, right? I'm just asking. Impact is the way we tell our narrative or also, but inherently
So
because it pays.
Yeah, it will. And the thing is, what does it mean if your impact disappears? Let's say a lot of work that's happening on soil impaction right now, or a lot of work that's happening on getting rid of agricultural residue in better ways. Let's say that is solved. Like, so this is sort of tied to that first question. If degradation reduces or if your impact disappears, what will happen to your business? I suspect a lot of you will already be ahead of that curve. You will have found the next thing to solve by that point in time. Or you will have recognized the limits of what can be solved in the current system. And that's where this is going. In the interest of time, I'm going to stop with what breaks first at scale. This is another big question. Working on your current field sites, working on your current state wide focus, what happens when you want to get bigger than that? What are the dependencies that will suddenly not function in the way you want them to? Just think about it. This is a big one. Don't expect everyone to know this immediately. But if someone has an inkling, feel free to jump in.
I had Manisha from Open Field and Dr. Sudha as well in line. So, Manisha, over to you after that, Sudha. If you could just introduce your organization names before you speak every time, since Dr. Amrita still isn't acquainted with all of you as well as we are.
Awesome. Yes, can I? Yes, hi, Amrita. Manisha from the Open Field. Uh, and I was just going towards my third, focusing on the third one, where, even if your impact disappeared, does your business still work? So that was one question, which I was partially going deep inside, and I had a thought about it, that what we believe that our entire model is built around improving the community income and reducing losses or creating stronger forest based value chain. So even if the impact disappears, the business may still function in a limited commercial way, but it does loosen it deeper sense of sustainability might be in a long term version. That's something which I thought uh, can be put upon. It might work, but then long-term sustainability can never be achieved. In that way, again,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
question to the degradations happen.
Right. And I think I'm going to sort of bring this line of thought all the way through, right? Some most successful businesses reinvent themselves multiple times. Most successful, impactful businesses do it on a much faster turnaround. So while you have a great idea that you're working on today, see it through. This is not a please get distracted and start thinking about 20 things now.
Yeah,
No.
definitely.
But this is a know that it is almost natural law that change will happen. And you've got to be adaptable enough to go there, even if you have the best shot of your answer right now, right? To draw another one is a lot of times in conservation, way back when conservation started, uh, just getting standing vegetation was enough. All the eucalyptus plantations were forest department plantations before they were paper and pulp plantations. All the sort of pine that you see in the hills that everyone comes to
Yes,
visit in
yes,
summer are forest department plantations.
yes.
It was thought that if you put enough trees, it's a forest, right? So know where you are in your evolution. You will do your best, but your best is going to get better in a couple of years.
Mm.
And again and again and again. So if your impact disappears on today's idea, you will probably already be on to the next thing by then, or in a different way. So that's kind of where I want to push you with that question. It may seem jarring right now because you're all just starting out on these ideas, but recognize that this is the constant. And this is the exciting part if we just flip that lens. It's not scary, it's the excitement of being able to do startup work. Does that help?
Yes, it does. It
Okay,
does.
great.
Thanks.
Someone else also wanted to jump in here.
Yeah, hi, Amrita.
Hi.
Sudha here. So I directly work with marginal and small scale farmers, providing affordable soil test as a service.
Nice.
And this we are trying to do through a micro entrepreneurs at local regions. So we failed miserably at one of the state, but it's picking up very good at another state. So when we tried to scale, so without my plan, it happened to be like I scaled almost like 4 states, like Gujarat, UP, Odisha, and Tamil Nadu. So every response is different, and like I'm trying to free something, or I should do that or not is also a question to me.
Right.
Or whatever is the market doing, let that happen.
Yeah.
But when I scaled, this was the issue. It happened. Every geography was different for me. I had to rework on my pricing models for every state. I'm trying to bring it one streamline it. I'm unable to do it. So when I'm
Right.
trying to scale, geography is the biggest challenge and adoption. Two things.
Right. And that's excellent, right? You already have some insight. A geographical change means a new benchmarking, means a new strategy for adoption. And so scale there is appropriately limited. Remember how I was talking about natural limits to processes? This is one of those. As founders, you'll have to be like, oh, this is going to scale really well in the north versus the south. Okay, so maybe for the first few years, we are going to do that. Or maybe this is going to scale peri-urban much faster than it's going to really in rural India, even though the product is for rural India. So perhaps for the first couple of years, we do peri-urban before we learn enough to go to rural India. That's okay. That's a mindful decision. But it's only when you do it and you think about it will you know what will break. And what will break will show you what's possible currently. So to think about that a little bit. Okay, we spent a lot of time here, and I'm really happy that you all were really interactive in this and in your own truths and honest way. That's very important in a session like this. If all of us just start saying what we think we each other wants to hear, we won't really get to real conclusive progress. So I really appreciate you all for being honest and doing this part. This was a really hard one to sit with, and I hope it was useful. So there's a section 6 on your worksheet. And so now what I kind of want you to do is just over the last hour that we spent together, more than an hour now, what is the one sort of uncomfortable thing that came up? Just write it down. We won't discuss it, but it should be there for you to think about later. I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that before we move on. And has everyone gotten to section 6 on their worksheet, or did we skip past something?
Could everyone just give us a quick show of hands if you've gotten till section 6? If you've not, you can keep your hand lowered. If you've gotten till section 6, please do raise your hand. Apart from that, I saw that Abhishek and Nagasa, you had some thoughts, but in the interest of time, we have about 12 minutes left. So I do want to give Dr. Amrita enough time to run through everything. Feel free to put in your thoughts, over the chat box, and we will have her for another session as well. So that I don't see any hands raised. Have we not reached to section 6?
Section 5 did we cover in terms of, I think there is something around restoration alignment is direct, indirect, and limited.
That was over here. That was over here when we was talking about
adjacency and
yeah. So we'll get into that in a bit. Let's just go here,
okay,
and then if you do this part, we might not do this quite so much, but we'll come here. This is what you're talking about, right? Adjacency versus embeddedness.
direct, indirect, yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of want you to fill that in before we go there, and then we'll go see what we actually filled in, whether it went well or not.
Yeah.
Okay. You can go back and edit some of your worksheet. No, you don't need to like, the first pass of some of this is to just think about it, and the second pass is to finesse. I'm going to move on, but if we don't have time or if something's left, we will come back to it at the end. I'll keep some 5 minutes at the end of this session for it. So you just check through that you've done sections 2 and 3. If we've done a lot of the chatting, what we were going to do with the popcorn, so I'm going to let that go. But if any contrasts, we've also had a couple of contrasts already over here. How do we all feel about moving past this slide? I'm good too if you're good too. This is mostly the discussions we've had so far. This was a placeholder for all of that.
Yeah, I think we can.
Okay.
I think those who haven't spoken, if they want to speak at this point of time, Oscillo, Prajwal, Namrata. Again, I'm just going off the top of my screen. If you haven't spoken, this is a good time to just share, cross-pollinate, as Dr. Amrita has very nicely put it.
And if someone's feeling shy, you can write in on your worksheet. That's fine as well, or in the chat, whichever way.
Yeah, the cross-pollinate means is it a inter-collaboration between the startups who manufacture the same kind of a machines or like that? Is that?
Not quite so much. Remember, we had a nice contrast before, diversifying risk versus focusing on one thing. That's a nice contrast to keep in your mind, to have it organically come up. Another contrast might be who's adjacent to restoration goals, but very important for livelihoods, and therefore very important to restoration, or who's directly involved with a restoration goal themselves. That might be a good contrast in this cohort to think about. Yeah, we did some of that, but we can do more of it in our next session where we're strengthening your sort of setup for your businesses as well. Okay.
Okay, I don't see anyone, Dr. Amrita. I think you should move past this.
Okay. So here's where we're going to get into some of this. And if you haven't filled in your worksheets and this is where you were stuck, we can sort of put some words to it, right? So there's a few things that happen in a cohort like this. There's some amount of adjacency, which is fine, but you should be just knowing that you're adjacent. There's some embedded ones, right? There's some value versus dependency mismatch, and we sort of spent a lot of time on this. But if someone's confused about this, think about the fact that you can have a really valuable business idea, but your dependency is so hard that maybe that's where all your risk is, and you can't really push for this value to become real. Or that delta is going to get really hard because your dependency is very big. That's something to think about. Another thing to think about is direct or indirect restoration claims. This is about storytelling, and this is about how you think about your work. If you get very clear about what your restoration claim is, the storytelling is almost intuitive. But if you are going to try and stretch to constantly become a direct restoration claim, because that's what's largely valued, you're in a very good cohort, you're in a very good incubator where that can be grappled with. But in many other places, people will just want you to say how many trees in the ground you've put. And that kind of diminishes your actual value. So clarity over here is going to be great for you, whether you're direct or indirect. And then, of course, we already talked about this just now, scaling before clarity. What happens? Things shift on you. Geographies change things. Your benchmarking has to happen all over again. And so there's a bit of your worksheet that I'm just going to leave for you to fill in, which is the final summary at the bottom of your worksheet one. That you can do even after we close. I want to leave the last 10 minutes to talk about. And these 4 pieces, we're going to start with this when we talk about strengthening. So you don't have to have it solved. You have to understand these 4 different things: adjacency, embeddedness, value versus dependency mismatch. Whether you're direct or indirect, both are fine, both are valuable, both have a different space identification. And scaling before clarity. What could be wrong? Again, these examples are just made up. They may not be real. Think about your own startup and how any of this applies. Okay, and that's kind of what I want to leave you with. If there's anything left on the worksheet that is confusing, we can talk about that. We can just talk about what this sentence means to you. Clarity today will serve future long-lived success. Or anything else that came up, whether it was a word I used you didn't understand because I am full of ecological jargon, apologies, or anything else. But thank you so much for spending this time with me, and I hope it was valuable. Anything from anyone in the chat, or are people just really working through their worksheets now?
I think they are, because I don't see anything on the chat. I do want to acknowledge a lot of applaud emoticons for you, Dr. Amrita.
I'm back. I can see people now.
Definitely very insightful.
Thank you.
Just started with our worksheet. That's the reason.
That's okay. Please go for it. Spend time on your worksheets. They're not meant to be really heavy lifts. They are essentially places for you to think more about things that you're doing. And I hope this was useful and it wasn't too abstract. I hope this was, and we're going to get more concrete in the next session as I familiarize myself with your work, as we talk about strengthening. This one was about positioning, and I hope it was, yeah, it was super fun for me to build out. Is kind of what I'm going with. Jayanji, I saw your hand up, unless it was a ghost hand that had to come back down.
No, we enjoyed the whole session, and I think it is one of the very few sessions where restoration is at the center of the focus. It's very difficult for people to understand the importance of making restoration self-financing or self-sustainable financially. I think this session helps us to align our thinking that, okay, this is what we're doing and how do we present that, in this in this particular way. So I definitely loved I mean, the entire session. I just had one question to Aparajita. When do you want us to submit the duly field session? Because I don't think, because we were completely focused on what your thoughts rather than because I don't want to give you some, and it's not possible to give some half-baked answers or just to complete it, you know. So I think that would be really helpful to know.
I think Dr. Amrita, you could come in there. I think because you need some time to evaluate the sheets as well.
Yeah. So I think if you could, again, I don't need these to be entirely. So there's two parts here. I need your responses, even if they're half baked, as long as they're filled into the sections. So those, if you can submit to me, so I can build the next session, that would be great. But from an incubator perspective, I know you wanted to do a poll as well, Aprajita. If the team here who's incubating all of you wants it to be far more fulfilled, maybe they can have a 3-day turnaround on those ones, or whatever works for all of you, because the next session we'll have in about a couple of weeks, I think.
Next to next week.
My next session. Yeah.
Yeah. Your
There'll
next
be
session. Yeah. So your next session would be mostly next to next week, mostly. But I think 3 days sounds like a good enough timeline. Would that work for everyone? These don't need to be super detailed. I know all of you are still reeling from the responses for the baseline survey. So these don't need to be very detailed. They can be very short and prompt. So if by Thursday you could help us with that, that'd be really great, because then Dr. Amrita would also have enough time. Yeah, does that work for you, Dr. Amrita? And Dr. Amrita, we have 15 minutes kind of chalked out for a post, kind of a staff minutes meeting we just want to have on coordination with the cohort members after you drop. So I think we're sorted there. As a last note, I have Pritha from our comms team who's here with us. She wants to take a group picture. So Pritha, over to you if you want to give us any instructions. I'm going to take a break from moderating and then hand it back over to Ananya. Dr. Amrita, you can maybe stop presenting now as well,
Have
so
I
that
not?
we can see
Oh my God. Okay. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Hello everyone. It was really a fun session actually, and it was pretty interesting to understand some of the concepts. And what I would request all of you is to just switch on your camera so that we can take a group photograph, and that would be really, really helpful. Thanks. You can see a few cameras which have not been switched on.
We have two accounts from Krishi. So Nagasai has his camera switched on. If it's comfortable for you, Dr. Sudha, it'd be great. Otherwise, I think we have
there is some issue
everyone.
with my laptop, so it's like
okay.
unable to.
That's okay. That's fine.
Okay. All right. Then I'll just take the screenshot then. Yes, please. Just I'll say cheese. Say cheese. Yes.
Pritha, did we do it?
Yes, we are done. We are done.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other
We are
last
done.
thoughts?
Thank
I
you
know
so
you
much.
wanted
Yes.
15 minutes for yourselves, so I can hang out for as long as you want me to, and then you can tell me.
I think we're good. Divya, Ananya?
No, I mean, I just want to come in just for a moment. I think it was a very valuable session. It's a great starting point because we have often seen a lot of the partners that we work with struggle with, just this basic, some of these basic questions of what the value chain is and, what is a restoration value chain? Where do I sit? Who else is in the ecosystem? Who can I work with? Who are my partners? Who are my competitors? So these are, I think, some very important questions which have been brought up today. And I hope we can keep some of these conversations going, because the more you give it thought, I think the more questions you'll have and the more specific answers you might also require. Right. So this is also a great opportunity. We also have a few more minutes, and Dr. Amrita is here. She's giving us a valuable time. So if anybody wants to bring up any questions, any thoughts, I mean, don't worry that it's too specific, for my business. Should I talk about it or not? Please just, feel free to come up. But yeah, I would just wanted to say, I think it's a great starting point. Thank you, Dr. Amrita, and thank you everyone for your participation so far. I think the learning is both ways. It's not just the facilitator taking us through the slides, and like she rightly said right at the beginning, we're all learning from each other, so that even that way it's been quite rich. But any more thoughts or any more specific questions, ideas? We can all learn from each other.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit interesting for me because some of them I still, to be honest, I think we haven't thought of. I think overall, what is the system? I think macro picture while I was telling also. So it was useful. Maybe while we write it down, I think where will we break, right? हम एज्यूम करके चलता है कि हम तो सक्सेस ही करेंगे तो
वही करना पड़ेगा नहीं तो सक्सेस कहाँ से आएगा
no it's at least important to know where will we break, right? I think these are some of the hard questions. I think so those are at least some of the at least two things that I could remember कि yeah at least you should know मतलब you might not act upon it but पता तो होना चाहिए कि where is it leading to at least.
Yeah, I think one of the tensions that came up that we want to keep in the room is about moving risk versus diversifying risk. I think that was a great one to come up organically. Another one was, as businesses, what are ways to engage with the wider networks and layers of the systems without losing being a business? That was an important one that came up. So I think if we have those two held as positive tensions to bring back into the room for the next session, that would be great. But I'm so glad I can see you all now, because for a lot of this I couldn't. So maybe there's a way I have to learn on Teams how to do that. But yeah, thank you all.
It doesn't happen when
on Teams.
It doesn't happen when you're doing full screen. Yeah.
Okay. I'll try on. Then I don't know how to do that, but I will try and figure it out. Abhishek, did you have something to jump in here with?
There was one more contradiction, I think, from my side. And that was like flipping the coin, like, should the business exist if the impact disappears, right? That is also one thing I'd like to keep in the group active.
A business should. So here's my take on that.
That business, you should do a business, but that business should.
No, maybe that business, once the impact, so let's put it this way, if the impact has disappeared because of an externality, then perhaps the business still needs to exist because an externality forced that impact to disappear, right? It's not that it was no longer needed. But let's say the impact has diffused now. The major impact has happened and the rest of it is just diffused and exists with a lot more actors in the ecosystem. At that point, a business should still be a business, right? So if the business is not going to be profitable, you yourself will have to change tack. So I think that's where you should go with that thinking, more than, and not immediately now. You don't need to know the answers now. You need to know that these things may happen to us, which is more the important positioning setup. Once you're very clear about your positioning, the punches can come and you can roll with them. But if you're unclear with your positioning, each of those challenges is going to shake what you should be. And that's not what we want as a cohort. That's not what any of these great ideas deserves, which is why we're spending the time on getting clarity on positioning. Yeah, I had a lot of fun. Thank you so much for having me. Please do let me know if there was any feedback, if there's an aspect that we've completely glossed over that comes up later on, or if you needed more examples from the different system layers that you may or may not engage with. Maybe that's something we can also carry over to the next session. My role today was mostly to translate across different systems as it applies to you. And if that role is valuable, we will continue with that. If a different role is more valuable, say specific startups do want to know about the research that I did, if it applies to them, then that is a different direction to take. That's not what this session was about. And I hope that came through. But yeah, thank you for all your kind words, everyone here. I'm going to jump off because I know you also wanted to get together. If this is the time, I'll go ahead and do that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amrita, for taking the time. This
Thank
was a
you so much.
fantastic starting point, as Divya's already said, and as everyone in the cohort has concurred. So thanks a lot for
All right.
starting us off on
Thanks,
such a
everyone. Bye.
Thank you.